you're almost shocked if you meet somebody and they never heard of them, right? Like I distinctly remember this and this was a while ago. I was like 27 and I was dating a 19-year-old, you know. She never heard of Jean-Claude Van Damme. I was like, what? This is my world. Like, how does he not exist in your world? How are we not living in the same world? Hey guys, in part two of my interview with Justin Bryte, he's half of the song duo Fly By Midnight. Check him out. Linked in the description below. Great music's indie pop. Check it out. But this is a really fun discussion on like why Van Damme was such a big deal and talking about just like movies, how they were, I think a lot of us feel this way, so much better in the 80s and 90s, especially the action martial arts films compared to like the stuff they do today. So really cool discussion. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, give it a thumbs up. And remember, check out Justin's music.
Those were the days of a movie studio signing an actor for a certain amount of pictures and like locking them in without even scripts first. Which I mean, those days are not here anymore, right? Like it's an absolute shit show. It's the Wild West out there. But I think it's really cool too to like see. I forget if it was Sudden Death or I think Sudden Death was part of his three picture deal or
Oh, with
but
Universal. Yeah, it was Street Fighter, Sudden Death, and then maybe it was The Quest. He did more movies with Universal, right? Or they distributed Lionheart, and then they did Hard Target. But
yeah.
yeah, it was after that he got that three picture deal that I guess what he got a little greedy and wanted more.
Yeah, well, that was the whole thing that the story, right, is that he didn't want to do sequels and he wanted way more
Mm.
and things underperformed. But like, it is crazy too to think the Stallones, the Schwarzeneggers, I mean, they did sequels. Van Damme never, which I guess is integrity, right? There's integrity there, but it's crazy when you think about like Stallone is very much a household name for people that don't even, aren't as obsessed as we are. But Van Damme is like more this like niche cult, epicness. Really crazy how not having a franchise can make that difference sometimes.
It's interesting though because he's so important to people like us. Like we see him like, oh, he's like the ultimate action guy. I mean, obviously Stallone and Arnold, they're ultimate action guys too, but we see him as you're almost shocked if you meet somebody and they never heard of him, right? Like I distinctly remember this and this was a while ago. I was like 27 and I was dating a 19-year-old, you know. At that's a decent age gap. 8 years when you're like older is not, but you know, it's a decent age gap, whatever. But anyway, the thing that threw me off was she never heard of Jean-Claude Van Damme. I was like, what? This is my world. Like, how does he not exist in your world? How are we not living in the same world? So obviously, you know, I had to show her a couple movies, like Lionheart, for example, is the one I usually ease people into, right? She was a
Yeah.
fan. She was a fan.
No,
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this to you, but my fiance, when I met her, I was like, hey, like, Jean-Claude is like and she had no idea who he
Wow.
was. And very sweetly, she kind of knew that after watching a couple movies with me, in the middle of watching Time Cop, she like paused it, and that was the first time she told me she loved me. And I was like, damn, you're doing it in the middle of Time Cop? Come on, you're playing on my heartstrings. But
Time Cop's even more special for you now.
exactly. No, but I mean, I mentioned to you too that I had been on weirdly serendipitously on set with Bianca Van Damme
Yeah, it's
um,
cool.
for a very random music video, and my music partner was with me, and he's not a Van Damme guy at all. But when he realized who she was, he looked at me like, "This has got to be your dream right now, huh?" And I was like, "Oh, I mean, and once again, she was super dope and so down to earth." But like, there is a weird like cult following that we forget that other people completely skipped over. I mean, a lot of people know Bloodsport, right? That's
Mhm.
sort of which is kind of crazy because that's his first movie, you know?
Pretty much, yeah. As
Or
the
first,
lead, anyway. Yeah, you can't really count
yeah,
No Retreat, No Surrender, you know, because he played the villain. But yeah, his first main movie, like crazy how good that was.
it's an impact that like, and honestly, what are your thoughts on The Quest? I thought that was like a cool homage of a tournament movie. I thought it was cheesy, you know?
Well, when I first seen it in the theater in the mid 90s, I was disappointed because again, Bloodsport set the bar, so you figure, well, this is so epic. They got a bigger budget, he's a bigger star. They're probably going to outdo Bloodsport. But that's the thing with movies like Bloodsport, Rocky, The Karate Kid. It doesn't matter the budget, man. Just everything fell into place and they capture lightning in a bottle. You could spend $100 million on a movie. You are not guaranteed to capture lightning in a bottle. You could spend 100 grand on a movie. You might catch it, man, with all the right ingredients, all the right people, just the right time, the passion. You can't pay for passion. Like you could pay for talent and some other stuff, but you're not paying for passion. That's either the team of filmmakers, they either have it or they don't about a project, man, and you're not paying for that. So,
Yeah, and I also think it is so interesting to hear that you saw that in movie theaters because I do think, I mean, hype is everything, right? So if you build a hype on something, you're certainly going to be let down if it doesn't live up to expectations,
yeah,
right?
basically.
And yeah, but for me, it's so like I'm 29 and everything I saw, I've never seen a Van Damme movie in theaters, and
Oh, yeah.
I and that's so crazy for me to think about. But like my expectations were always zero. So even
Mhm.
movies that were maybe not my favorite, like Derailed or some of these like weird ones,
Real, yeah.
I always kind of like came in with this like very low expectation. Like, well, that was interesting. That was an odd movie, you know?
Mhm.
Um, but that's crazy. So would you say you saw a majority of Van Damme movies in theaters?
No, because like I seen Time Cop in the theater. I remember that because there's a couple my brother and a couple friends watched it with me and some of my friends had already seen it, but that's how big of a deal he was back then. It's like, you don't watch his movie once in theater. It's like, well, let's go again. He was such a big deal, man. And with you being 29, I know you appreciate the hell out of them, but you can't appreciate it as much as people that grew up in the 80s and 90s. Because again, guys like Van Damme and Seagal, like that these were like the martial art gods and the action film gods, along with Stallone and Arnold, of course. But they were such a big deal. Like everybody knew about them, not just guys. Hey, I like karate movies. Well, of course you heard of Van Damme. Like my parents knew who Van Damme was. They're not in the karate movies.
Great. That's so interesting to yeah, I mean, I certainly missed that sort of I'd say when I was going to theaters, even the notion of like real martial artists in movies, I went to go see Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon in
Okay.
theaters.
Yeah, sure.
That was maybe the last time that I remember there. Of course, that's wire work, and that's
Mhm.
quite different, but that was maybe, in my opinion, the death of theatrical martial artists. And I'm a firm believer in when things swing a certain way too far in Hollywood or entertainment, they normally come back.
Oh, sure.
I've been preaching to my friends like, look, man, we're going to see like forget the CGI thing. It's getting out of hand. Even people like seeing Marvel movies, like normal spectators are like,
Mhm.
oh, it's looking a little ridiculous now. And I think we're going to see this sort of callback, I hope, to the world of like real one take choreography, like something that has like a real grounded art to it. What was the movie that came out? Did you see Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Um,
That's
who
the one
who's
with
in that? I've heard of that.
that's the
Oh,
one
oh, it's the girl from Crouching Tiger, Hidden
Crouching
Dragon, Michelle
Tiger.
Yeoh,
Yes,
and
Michelle
and
Yeoh,
that kid from Temple of Doom. Yeah.
from Indiana Jones. Yeah, yeah. Did you see it?
No, I'm aware of it, but it didn't really
Oh,
interest me, man.
it really, I felt like the trailers didn't do it justice, but that is like the first callback to them trying to figure out how to work in CGI, but also like show like an art form, like show the dance that is kind of missing from action right now. And
Yeah,
you gotta check that movie out. I highly recommend.
I'm gonna watch it based on your recommendation, and I'll let you know, man. I'll send you a message later. But one thing with the real action and not green screen, there's some, well, obviously there's something real because you're filming something, which again is another thing when they shot stuff on film, that's like physically you could pick up film, it's like a real thing. So it has a different look also. But when you talk about like real action, they used to Rambo First Blood Part 2. There's a scene where this helicopter drops a bomb and there's this huge explosion and Stallone's running and he jumps and dives off a waterfall and the fire like almost hits him. It's like it looks so real because it is real. That fire was literally, I'm sure that was a stuntman, but still, it's like they literally, that happened in the real world. Granted, it was set up, but that literally happened and they caught it on film. The stuff with the green screen, it's just, well, obviously it's artificial, but there's just, you could sense the fakeness, right? And the thing I hate about wire work and green screen, they don't quite get the physics right. So you're just like taken out of it automatically. You're just like, oh, wait a minute. If this story is supposed to take place in our world, these physics don't match. And then I just, I might as well just watch a video game at that point because that's what it feels and looks like.
100%. I think there is a level of like, even the green screen work, there, of course, the director sees some pre-rendered to kind of get a visual of what it may look like. But there's also like, even like when we film our music video, we direct and edit them. And 90% of the time we're saying, well, in post, we'll figure out a way to fix it. And
Mm.
I think in today's cinema making, there probably is that sort of mindset also where like I was watching the other day End of Days behind the scenes,
Okay.
which was an interesting movie too. But the miniature work they did in that. Remember the miniatures they would do for these sets? They build these little towns and they blow stuff
Yeah, it
up.
was really cool, man.
Like,
Unless you're
but
talking about Derailed, where it looked like somebody's train set in their basement, man.
I mean that was yeah that was the other side of it. But like they clearly had a vision that they were filming then and not green screen saying that's going to be where the train is behind them. You know what I mean? Like I think they've just sort of lost this vision and it feels disconnected. I mean even Benedict Cumberbatch, I forget his last name, the one who plays Doctor Strange now,
Yeah.
he openly just came out and said acting in these movies is a weird sort of art. They're not no one's comfortable with little green screen suits on and it's just not you're not getting that same quality, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be a little weird, man. But like you said, I think the thing's gonna come back, that old school action type film. There's just that realness, that grit to it, right? And I bet you those movies were a lot more fun to make too, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it seems a movie one of my favorite action movies ever was Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, that's amazing.
I have a tattoo for it. Remember,
Oh, is it?
if you can see it, but it's a thing they do. I forget the guys, the good guys that essentially are on Kurt Russell's side. The guys wearing white or whatever, they go like
Mhm.
that. Um, but that movie just seemed fun as hell to make.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you
You
could tell
know?
just Kurt Russell's performance, man. Like he's almost it's an interesting performance because it's almost like you could tell this guy's just having fun making a movie, but you still buy him as the character he's playing.
You ready, Jack? I was born ready.
Yeah, could you imagine how weirdly less inspiring it would be if I don't know if like everything was just inanimate and wasn't lively around him. Like the sets they built there were like it was real, you know? And yeah, I just have a feeling. I think sometimes when things go a little bit too electronic per se, they find a way back to analog through a nostalgic lens. And I really hope. I mean, you got some of these amazing martial artists right now that are like we spoke about Scott Adkins, right? That I think there may be a new wave. I hope for these sort of martial artists to be appreciated again. You know?
Yeah, and they definitely need the right project with the right character because when we talk about any of these movies, it's always about the character. You talk about Stallone, I mean, you're talking about people talk about Rocky and Rambo, right? That's who they talk about, not necessarily Stallone himself. So yeah, and then even what we're gonna talk about, like the top. Well, I got my list down to top five, like
Yeah.
emotional scenes Van Damme did, but a lot of it just has to do with the character, right? And then it connects with the audience because we care about the character, so therefore we care what happens to the character. But when a lot of these films, especially like the lower grade ones, lower budget, they don't really concentrate on the character. Then you just don't really care what happens to him. You're not involved, man, and that's a big issue. But I don't think they put enough attention to that. They're just more focused. Okay, we got 21 days to shoot. Let's try to get as much cool action in as we can. And yeah, granted, that's kind of what people want in a way because these are action movies. So we are expecting to see some people get their butt kicked, maybe a car blow up, etc. But for me, man, like I always need something. I don't know, maybe because I'm older. Like I always kind of equate it to like I just feel like a lot of those movies are one night stands. Like I don't need to remember them. I don't really care about them, and they're easily forgotten. Whereas like they have like no qualities that I care to remember, etc. But for like a good movie, it's a long-term relationship. It's almost a marriage. It's like, you know how many times I watch Bloodsport? You know how many times I watch Lionheart? I'm literally married to those movies. Those movies, those are my wife movies. Those movies are the equivalent of my wife, right? And I
Yeah.
love that. And it just gets stronger over time. So they don't really seem to make movies like that anymore.
No, and you to your point, they also when you look back on those movies, of course you think of the, the kicks and everything, but you can't recall the exact kick or punch he did. That's not what draws you back.
Mhm.
It is this like they really they like you said, they sort of struck this like very once in a lifetime sort of thing with Lionheart and Bloodsport where like they injected heart into a movie that you necessarily didn't think would have this sort of like this sort of foundational emotional structure.
You definitely got heart, Lionheart. Don't ever lose it because you never get it back.
But you said you have your five. I think if one, two, three, four. Yeah, I think I have five.
Oh, you
I'm
got five? That's cool. We'll
I'm
exchange these
curious.
and
Yeah.
talk about them. One more comment I got to make though, and you'll appreciate this being a music artist, is we can't forget how important the scores were with those movies. They
Oh yeah.
don't do that now. They got some cheesy techno thing that's like, it does nothing. Nobody's listening to that stuff in the gym. I mean, these old scores from like Rocky, from Bloodsport, from Kickboxer, it's like they're amazing. And then in Lionheart, they had like a freaking like a live orchestra doing it. It's, you know,
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up too because that even, I have friends that work in orchestral music supervising now for movies, and that's a whole different game now. I have a friend who's extremely successful right now in sort of the DC world and like
oh,
the
nice.
movie scores, and he was saying like the notion of I don't know if you remember, but like even the old Batman movies of Michael Keaton, when they would appear for the first time, they had this like very iconic, orchestral composition that really described it. It almost like it made that specific movie have its own vision. And I totally agree with what you're saying. When he's running back in Lionheart to his sister-in-law
Oh,
and his
yeah.
and the kid, that is that defines that entire movie. It is that orchestral moment. I could like hear it in my head and also Bloodsport 2 was I have the album downloaded on Spotify, but that's a really interesting synthwave sort of ahead of its time
Hmm.
soundtrack, and yeah, I mean they don't do that anymore. It's so funny. The friend that I was just referring to, he said was it the Justice League Snyder cut I think he worked on, and he said all the briefs for it was make it sound like X, another composer.
Oh,
There's no, it's all emulation now. There's no room for, self-discovery because everything's in this crazy time budget.
mm. Yeah, they take away a lot of the creativity and other things. You need to get the vinyl though, man. You
Oh,
need to get the vinyl, dude. And that's going back to kind of like what you said, like physical media, something real, intangible. Like, these have a warmer sound than just like your digital album.
yeah.
So yeah,
Wow,
this
look at that.
it's
That's
really cool,
gorgeous,
man.
huh?
Just the artwork alone and just having this like in your bookcase is worth it, right? I mean, obviously the
Did
music
you
is insanely good.
did you get that on is that like Mondo or somewhere like that? Did they
Oh,
have
I
that for
forget
sale?
who put this thing out, man. Like,
Because it that feels like a recollection. Like the art's like super crisp and stuff.
yeah, isn't that crazy? Let's do the top. Well, like I said, I think you also have five, but basically the top
Yeah, no,
five Van
no.
Damme emotional scenes. In the next video, we're gonna have a very interesting discussion talking about Van Damme's most emotional performances. Most people just talk about his badass action, which that is worthy of discussion, but we wanted to do something a little different. So make sure to check that video out when it drops.